Moral dilemma! Hey guys, it's your Alicia, aka Geek XX Chic, and we are here with the final review for the first season of Loki, which was really, really good. I found it to be very entertaining. We got all the truth around how the TVA came to be finally. We got to see the brain, or I guess we could say really brains behind it. And I thought it was actually really good. Because you know, when you build up something as big as what this season has kind of tried to make the TVA and the timekeepers and all that to be, you had to have a really good finale, right? Like if this finale wasn't good, it would have been very disappointing and annoying. I really didn't have that worry though. Like Marvel has been consistently doing really good jobs with telling stories, especially with these series in my opinion. So I didn't think that I'd be disappointed, and I wasn't. Let's talk a little bit about I loved He Who Remains, whatever the name we never got to hear. The actor killed it. I loved, he did such a good job of being this playful, yet brilliant, yet deep, like deeply wise person all at once. And I don't think that's an easy mood to get into. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you describe this? Like, how do you describe this character? This character that's probably been around for aeons at this point. And he's extremely smart. He's extremely detailed. And at the same time, he is a human. And he is dealing with something that is so beyond what a human alone is supposed to be able to handle. And he's been alone, most likely, for just as long as, you know, the TVA's been around. So that would cause a level of madness, right? We were not meant to be alone as humans. So there's just a lot going on there, and I really think the actor did a fantastic job of encompassing what that could possibly be like in this personage. Hearing him explain why, because that's the big question, right? I think that was the big question once we figured out what the divine timeline was like. It was understanding why this would happen. Why would the TVA feel the need, like why does there have to be one timeline? Why does he get to decide that? Why does it have to keep going this way? And who is he or them, or, you know, we thought it was them before that, to decide that this is the right timeline versus another one. And so, of course, that was the big moral question that kind of kept coming up throughout. And obviously, seeing Sylvie, seeing Loki, seeing, I guess by extension, all the members of the TVA, the personal pain and suffering that these decisions are making is really what the issue was, right? Because obviously people were getting hurt. People were having their lives ripped away from them because of this decision of what is the master timeline. So I loved how he explained it. I love that little animation that they gave us, because I just think pictures just help. Like the dialogue was great, but the added visual aid really helped to give us an idea of what was going on there. And first of all, I'm not gonna lie, I'm happy that they made this guy who like discovered the multiverse first a brother, just killing it back in the 31st century. But I digress. Love that, you know, he said it was something that, as it would be for most scientific people with scientific minds, that it started out benevolent. It sounded out great. It started out as something where people were just like, yes, like we could make this a great exchange between all of our worlds. But as it goes, not everybody is on board. Not everybody made the same benevolent choice. Not everybody wanted to just learn and share and grow. Some people just wanted to dominate. And Loki kind of discovered that. Like, I feel like now seeing the last episode with all the Lokis and seeing that some of them were just hell-bent on betrayal, while some of them were kinder and more benevolent, like OG Loki and Kid Loki. And so it's kind of like, this is the same thing that happened here with He Who Remains. And so inevitably, as he said, the fighting started. And I guess what was really interesting and what, you know, I thought was kind of the mind-blowing part of it was that he was saying, I just happened to be the victor in this round of fights. But the reality was this war was always going to end with one version of me claiming that to be the ultimate timeline and getting rid of everybody else's, or attempting to conquer everybody else's, which probably meant that he was going to, again, do exactly what this guy did, right? So it's really cool because it's very much, it's like this kaleidoscope. Like, it's like no matter how you look at this thing, it's got a lot of facets, and yet it's still one thing. It's still one prism that's making this one thing. And that's the part I said, like, it's just so mind-blowing when you think, when he's like, yeah, like technically you can be mad at me for what I did, but the reality is somebody was going to sit in this place. Somebody was going to do it. I'm the one who did it, and I believe that I'm the most benevolent one out of them because I wanted to like save my timeline. But again, who is he to decide that all the other timelines don't get a chance to exist on the chance that one of those variants of him was going to be a bad variant and be just as smart and capable as he was? Moral dilemma. So I love it. That's such a really interesting and realistic type of dictatory dilemma, I guess you could say, because a lot of times we hear the word dictatorship and of course it puts a very bad taste in our mouths as human, because typically a lot of dictators have been far from benevolent and caring and loving. Or I guess we could say not necessarily dictator, kings. I'd say monarchs, right? That's kind of the situation in monarchies. You got one person who's supposed to be in charge of everyone and make all these decisions for the better good of people, but inevitably some people are going to disagree. And if you actually are someone who believes you're doing the right thing, just like in any country that has a monarch or even a government, they make decisions as to what is good, bad, right, wrong for an entire society. And of course, there's going to be factions who are always going to say, no, that's not right, or I don't agree. But it's kind of impossible to appease everybody. It's not possible to be the guy or girl who knows all the answers. And so there's a very heavy weight that comes with that. And I think that this actor did a great job of exhibiting where he came from. He did come from, I think, a benevolent place. And I think he really thought he was doing the right thing. But the sacrifice that he had to make in order to do what he thought was right, this is where that moral dilemma comes in, right? Do the ends justify the means? I talked about this in several shows now, but that's the big question. And obviously in Sylvie's case, she absolutely doesn't believe that it does. She feels like, no, if what you think had to happen required you to prune off all these different realities and all these different worlds, and me in particular, like people who are like me every single time, it can't be right. It can't be the right solution. And that's understandable, because for her, right, like that wasn't a good solution for her and other Lokis. Look how many Lokis were on that planet suffering because of this man's decisions. So, but at the same time, you understand, right? You understand how he just sat there at the end and he looked at them and he's, especially that moment. I love how they filmed that moment of when he stopped controlling everything, of when he allowed his knowledge of everything to stop. And you saw that mixture of fear and curiosity and a little bit of excitement, because my guy's probably been hella bored with knowing how everything is going to turn out over and over and over again. But just the way he just was in that moment, and also like somewhat ready to die, right? Like I knew, and Loki figured it out very quickly, that he wasn't lying when he was like, no, I'm ready to end this. Like, this is exhausting. It's exhausting to constantly be trying to make this thing that's not natural, try to keep this singular reality, which is not the way it's supposed to be, the way that I think it's supposed to be. It's a constant job. Hence why he created the TVA, to help him to do that and can keep it going. But even then, he's got to keep an eye on everything. And it's exhausting. And it also had to be like, he is a man. Like in the end, I love that they kept bringing out that he's just a man, flesh and blood, which means he's got the same emotions and range and everything as Sylvie and Loki and everybody else. So of course it had to have been chipping away at him for centuries to know that he keeps killing everything from, innocent people to children, to keep this thing going that he at one point figured was the only way. Like, it's a very heavy, heavy crown to bear. And as I said in the episode, the reality is that most people who are in positions of power, even if they do what most people consider to be a fairly good job, it's a very thankless job. And the second you make a mistake, everyone is ready to just set you aflame. Like, it's tiring to keep hurting people when that's not your true nature. And I don't think he enjoyed or wanted to. Like, he looked at Sylvie. God, I love that moment when he looked at her and he said, grow up. Like, you're crying about your reality and your family and your hard life. And yes, those are valid, but girl, there are bigger things afoot, right? There are bigger things going on here. I'm telling you that there could be an infinite number of people who are as smart and powerful as me, but that really don't give a damn about anybody. And I'm the one thing that's been standing in the way of that. That is a little bit bigger than you crying about your childhood. That's a little bit bigger than you having a hard go of it. I felt for him, and I think that's why Loki really did connect with him eventually and see that, oh my gosh, like, Loki has always thought he wanted power and always thought he wanted all this control, but I think he finally understood in that moment how heavy that burden actually is, because he never thought that far. Loki only thought about the power of it all, but when he understood the weight that this man has been carrying for so long, that's when it hit him that, oh my God, like, I don't want that. Nobody wants that. Like, better for him to carry this and continue to carry the guilt and the blood guilt that comes along with that than us. Or so he thought, right? So it was very understandable that he kind of was like, okay, now I'm starting to see, like, it came very much down to that devil you know versus the one you don't. But I just love that, they really made this preposition that he gave them a really difficult one. It really was, if you were thinking about it. Sophie was just, unfortunately, Sophie is a creature of revenge. Her story, as he who remains described it, her path that molded her and changed her into what she is, she couldn't see past her revenge. That's what's kept her going all this time. That's what's been her fuel. That's been her breakfast, lunch, and dinner from the second that she escaped the first time. And she just doesn't want to see beyond that. She just thinks freedom is the ultimate goal. And I'm not entirely disagreeing with that. There's a lot of people out there who believe that you should be allowed to do and say and act any way you want. But complete freedom is not something that exists in our world even now. Every country that is an organized country in this world has laws, regulations, rules. There are things that have, even nature, even the world we live in is ruled by natural laws, universal laws, scientific laws. Everything has a way of doing things. Nothing is completely chaotic. And Loki saw that part. Loki realized that, yeah, freedom is great, but if, like this guy described, if we open up this huge worm, the can of worms, that we don't even have the first concept of how big it is. Are we really going to be prepared for this? Are we really going to be able to handle this? Are we really going to be able to protect the people that we love? Because Loki still has people he loves. And maybe that's the difference between him and Sylvie, right? Sylvie, I mean, she absolutely did care about Loki, but she doesn't really have anyone left. Like, her whole reality was erased. So she feels alone still. She still feels like she's alone, whereas Loki still has Thor. Right? He still has somebody that he loves very much. And he, like he said, I mean, I'm going to get to the whole Loki Sylvie moment in a minute, but you get what I'm saying? Like, Loki, he never wanted like worlds to die or anything like that. Like, he's had his moments, but he's never just wantonly wanted people dead. So he was just really scared for the things that he still wanted to protect. And that's really what hit him in that last moment. And like I said, the understanding that everything requires some level of governing and law. And if it's not this guy, who's it going to be? But yeah, it's just, there were so many amazing moments in that speech. Like I said, I don't think I spoke a lot in the episode because I was too busy really trying to hear it all. But particularly what hit me was when he, when she was, of course, when Sylvie was being very petulant, going, oh, you're just a liar. Oh, you're a terrible person. Look at all the worlds you pruned. And after he gave her that speech, like, grow up, he's like, you're a murderer. She did. How many TVA agents did she prune and kill with no thought, no care, no remorse, right? Like, those were people too. But you thought for your cause it was a righteous thing to do. So like the dude said, none of us here are heroes, ma'am. Not even you. You're the hero of your story, but I'm pretty sure if I read this to somebody else, you'd be a villain. Yeah, there was just a lot of very, very good moral questions brought up there. And again, I think it goes into the very deep questions around leadership, around what free will really means, around how humans perceive what's right and wrong. Like, it was a very deep convo. And the fact that they fit that all into one episode, plus wrapped up this idea of creating the multiverse in one episode, is really, really well done, I have to say. But yes, going into inevitably the Loki versus Loki fight. First of all, he who remains, his reaction through the whole thing was gold. Woo, my guy was this close to just conjuring some popcorn and watching it all go down, and I was here for it. This show was about Loki. Sylvie was a main character, but the lead is Loki. It was about Loki and Loki's development, and as He Who Remains said, this was all about changing Loki's mindset for permanently changing it for real, for the long haul. And while Sylvie was already somebody, like, part of her variancy is that she is and always has been a kinder, more sensitive person maybe than Loki ever was, she never really changed. Like, who she fundamentally was from when we saw her in episode, what was that, 2 the first time we saw her, 3, to now, she's been the same person. Loki is the person who's changed so much. Because Loki of episode 1, if he had been plopped right in front of that guy today, he would have killed him himself. Or he would have killed Sylvie, sorry. He would have killed Sylvie just like that and been like, yep, I can be king of all the timelines. Bye, right? But now he's changed so much that he actually is a big picture thinker for the first time ever. And that glorious purpose mantra of his is really meaning something to him now. That's why in the end, he diverged for the first time from kind of because he was kind of following Sylvie along there for a while, mostly just to be in her presence. But when that came down, fundamentally, he identified with the part of himself that was Sylvie, the very hell-bent on revenge side of himself. But in the end, he realized that that was not going to be the right move. For once, he didn't just go with his first primal urge. He actually stopped and thought about it and realized that this wasn't the only way. I think what he really wanted was to have more time, like to let the multiverse continue to grow for a bit, figure out a plan, and then him and Sylvie could figure it out. But obviously Sylvie wasn't about that. She felt like, as we saw in the end, she just could not let go of her trust issues, where we saw with Loki, for the first time ever, let his trust down, let his guard down 100%. That was the most beautiful part of the episode for me. Tom Hiddleston get me with them tears. For the first time, probably in his life since maybe his mom, the connection he had with his mother, he let his guard all the way down and he literally trusted Sylvie implicitly and begged her and was like, I don't want anything to happen to you. I really care about you. And for once, I care about someone more than myself. Please. And she saw that window and she used it against him. And so, as it goes, I mean, I personally, how I feel about the relationship. I'm not going to rant about it anymore, but I'm okay with them. Like I said, I mean, they're clearly not going to be able to make this work being on such opposite pages, but we will have to see how this goes now, because obviously Sylvie's still alive and she still has the 10 pad that the guy had. So what's she going to do with it? Is she going to destroy it? Is she going to want the timeline to continue to evolve? But as the guy said, a bit like Thanos, he's inevitable. Like, there will be another version of him. And now back at the TVA, we saw that the faceless time lizard now looks like him. So the reality is already shifted. That's what I'm taking it to mean, is that the timeline and the reality is shifted already. We saw that Mobius has forgotten who he is already, forgotten everything that Loki told him. And I don't know if that's because of the timeline changing or if it's because, as we saw, Ravona's gone. She left. Where did that clock chick send her? And she went off on a mission on her own, and which I don't think was independent of He Who Can Remember. Like, I just feel like dude had a backup plan. I just don't know what it is. And from the sound of things, we might have to wait all the way until next season to find out. But chaos is brewing. As some of you brought out way back in episode 1 for me, thank you, because I completely forgot about the titles of the next couple of movies coming down the pipe. This is what kicks it off, right? Now we know the multiverse has started. Doctor Strange's movie is going to have to deal with this to some extent, and obviously so is Spider-Man's. So I'm very interested to see how this goes and what new villain this is going to bring, because Thanos was the overarching villain of the first franchise. Is the guy we just saw who going to be the one for the second, or is it going to be someone even worse, or a multiple set of someone's? Super interested in that, and I feel like this is going to tie into the Eternals as well, because they've been kind of sitting outside of a lot of things, it sounds like, throughout the centuries as well. So that was a great series overall. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think everyone did a great job as usual. I did not even realize I needed Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston to be... I didn't know I needed that bromance in my life, but I'm glad we got it. Everyone did their roles to perfection, and I'm kind of glad that we still are going to have, like, Ravonna in season 2. I think that her character is going to turn out to be something very interesting. I feel like if Ravonna had been offered the deal that He Who Remains gave, she would have taken it. I wonder why he didn't offer it to her. This is the question that I have. Maybe he wanted chaos. Maybe this is exactly what he wanted after all this time, but I think they ended it really well. This is an ultimate Cliffy. I'm a little disappointed we gotta wait most likely a year before we get to see anything else, or more than that. I don't know if they're planning on throwing this in between movies or not, but we'll see. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. What did you guys think? What are your theories? What are you thinking? What did I miss? I know I might have missed some things. I'm definitely going to rewatch it again to see if there was anything little that I missed in the surroundings. But I enjoyed it thoroughly. And if you enjoyed watching along with me, guys, and watching this whole season with me, I'd appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up button. And that's pretty much it. We will see you in the next video.